Rolihlahla Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in a small village named Mvezo, which is located in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. Rolihlahla is a Xhosa term which means pulling the branch of a tree, but it is often used to describe someone who is a troublemaker. Little did anyone know then how fitting this name would be for the young boy who would grow up to shake the entire nation. Mandela's father, Gadla Henry Mfakani-Iswa, was an important man in Mvezo. He was a chief of the Thembu tribe. The Thembu people are part of the Xhosa nation, one of the biggest ethnic groups in South Africa. From his father, Mandela learned about his ancestors' bravery during the wars of resistance. These stories had a strong influence on Mandela and helped him understand the value of freedom. Mandela's childhood in Mvezo was simple. He spent his days playing with other children in the village and looking after the cattle. Although he lived in a hut made of grass and mud, he was content. He enjoyed playing in the clear streams and rolling hills around Mvezo. But Mandela's life changed when his father lost his position as the chief. This happened when Mandela was just 9 years old. His mother moved him to Kunu, another village. Mandela would later describe Kunu as a place where he was happiest, enjoying the simple pleasures of rural life. These early years in Mvezo and Kunu played a vital role in shaping Mandela's view of the world. He witnessed the hard work of the people, their respect for their chiefs, and their community spirit. He also saw the harsh reality of life under colonial rule and the injustice faced by his people. These experiences laid the foundation for his lifelong fight against injustice. Life in these tranquil villages, surrounded by nature, would be a sharp contrast to Mandela's later years. But he would always remember his roots. As he once said, "I am fundamentally an optimist. Whether that comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say." Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed toward the sun, one's feet moving forward. There were many dark moments when my faith in humanity was sorely tested, but I would not and could not give myself up to despair. That way lays defeat and death. As a child, Nelson Mandela's first experience with formal education took place in Kunu, at a local mission school. It was here that he was given the name Nelson by a teacher, following a common practice of giving African students English names. Recognizing his potential, Mandela's guardian arranged for him to attend a more prestigious school for further studies. So, at the age of 16, Mandela left home for Clarkberry Boarding Institute, a Western-style institution. It was a big change for him. He traded in his blanket and sandals for a school uniform and shoes. He also learned about Western culture, and for the first time, he had the opportunity to study English, history, and geography. At Clarkberry, Mandela also began to understand the value of discipline, hard work, and commitment. In 1939, Mandela enrolled at the University of Fort Hare, which was the only Western-style university for black students in South Africa at the time. It was here that his political consciousness really began to take shape. He studied politics, met students from other tribes and countries, and started to understand more about the unfair treatment of black people in South Africa. During his time at Fort Hare, Mandela met Oliver Tambo, a fellow student. The two of them would later become lifelong friends and important figures in the struggle against apartheid. However, Mandela's life took a sharp turn when he found out that his guardian had arranged a marriage for him. Unwilling to accept this, Mandela made a brave decision to leave the university without completing his degree and escape to Johannesburg. This marked a significant turning point in his life, as he had to start a new life in a big city, away from everything he knew. In Johannesburg, Mandela worked as a guard and later as a law clerk while completing his bachelor's degree through correspondence. He also started studying law at the University of Witwatersrand. Here, he was the only black African student among largely white and often hostile peers. These experiences in Johannesburg exposed him to the harsh realities of racial discrimination more vividly. It was in this multicultural city that Mandela's political views hardened, and he became determined to fight for equality and justice. This period of Mandela's life, filled with both educational growth and personal awakening, planted the seeds for his later activism. The knowledge he gained and the injustice he witnessed stoked the fires of resistance that would eventually lead to his leading role in the struggle against apartheid. The 1950s were a time of increasing unrest in South Africa, as the government continued to implement strict laws and regulations segregating the black and white populations. This period saw Nelson Mandela rise as a prominent figure in the African National Congress, ANC, which was the leading organization opposing the government's policies. In 1952, the ANC launched the Defiance campaign, which was a non-violent resistance against apartheid, the policy of racial segregation enforced by the South African government. Mandela was appointed as the national volunteer-in-chief of the campaign. The goal of the Defiance campaign was to get people to break unjust laws and offer themselves up for arrest. The laws targeted included those which limited black people's freedom of movement, such as the pass laws which required non-whites to carry identity documents at all times. Mandela played a crucial role in organizing this campaign. He traveled around the country, inspiring people to join the cause, ensuring that the campaign was well-structured and disciplined. He emphasized the importance of non-violent resistance and made sure that the volunteers were ready to face the consequences, which often included being arrested and jailed. The campaign started in the early hours of June 26, when Mandela and other volunteers burned their passbooks. This day was later known as Freedom Day. The Defiance campaign was the largest non-violent resistance effort South Africa had seen up until that time. It saw thousands of individuals, both black and white, coming together to protest against the oppressive laws. The campaign didn't succeed in changing the laws, but it did achieve some significant victories. It raised awareness about apartheid internationally, gained the ANC more support in members, and showed the South African government and the world that the black population was united against apartheid. It also marked Mandela's emergence as one of the leading figures in the ANC, setting the stage for his future role in the fight against apartheid. For Mandela, the Defiance campaign was a defining moment in his life. It confirmed his belief in the power of collective action and civil disobedience, setting him on the path to becoming one of the world's most influential activists. The second half of the 1950s was marked by rising tensions in South Africa. The non-violent resistance, such as the Defiance campaign, had created waves, but the government's oppressive apartheid laws remained. This harsh reality made many anti-apartheid activists question whether peaceful protests were enough. Nelson Mandela was one of those who started to believe in a more assertive approach. He argued that non-violent protest had not yielded the needed changes and that the government's increasing brutality required a stronger response. In 1961, Mandela played a significant role in founding Umkhonto we Sizwe, translated as Spear of the Nation, often referred to as MK. This new group was an armed offshoot of the African National Congress, ANC. Mandela, who was elected as its leader, argued that their activities would not be random acts of violence, but a controlled pressure tactic against the government. He emphasized that their primary targets would be symbolic representations of apartheid, not people. Mandela had hoped that armed struggle would work alongside, not replace, nonviolent protests. MK launched its first acts of sabotage against government buildings on December 16, 1961, a day known as the Day of Reconciliation in South Africa. The group specifically chose this day to signal the desire for a united, non-racial South Africa. The creation of MK was a turning point for Mandela and the fight against apartheid. It marked the shift from purely nonviolent protests to a strategy of armed resistance. Although this decision was not easy, Mandela believed it was necessary. He recognized the increasing harshness of the apartheid regime and felt that more assertive actions were needed to bring about change. As a result, Mandela's role evolved from a peace advocate to a freedom fighter, ready to make whatever sacrifices were necessary for his people's freedom. This change would lead to significant consequences, personally for Mandela, and more broadly for the fight against apartheid. The Rivonia trial is considered a significant turning point in South African history and Nelson Mandela's life. Taking place between 1963 and 1964, the trial was named after the suburb of Johannesburg where many ANC members, including Mandela, were arrested. On July 11, 1963, the South African police raided a house in Rivonia. They found and arrested several members of the ANC who were meeting there. These individuals, along with Nelson Mandela, who was already in prison for minor charges, were accused of planning acts of sabotage to overthrow the apartheid government. The trial began on October 9, 1963, and Mandela, along with his comrades, faced serious charges. They were accused of 4 counts of sabotage and conspiracy to violently overthrow the government, charges that could result in the death penalty. The trial was heavily biased from the start, with an unsympathetic judge and a legal system designed to suppress black South Africans. However, the accused didn't lose hope. Mandela and his co-defendants turned the trial into a platform to expose the injustice of apartheid to the world. Mandela, acting as his own defense, delivered a powerful 4-hour speech during the trial. His speech ended with these famous words: "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." After an 8-month trial, on June 12, 1964, Mandela and 7 other defendants were found guilty. Instead of the death penalty, they were sentenced to life imprisonment. The sentence was devastating, yet Mandela walked out of the court with his head held high, ready to pay the price for his beliefs. The Rivonia trial brought international attention to South Africa's apartheid policies and Mandela's fight for freedom. Even though it marked the beginning of his long years in prison, it also helped establish Mandela as a symbol of resistance and a leader for equality worldwide. Following the Rivonia trial, Nelson Mandela began his life sentence in the harsh environment of Robben Island, South Africa's most notorious prison. He was 45 years old when he started serving his sentence. Life on Robben Island was extremely difficult. Mandela was confined to a small cell with barely any sunlight. The cell was so small that when he lay down to sleep, his feet would touch the walls. There was no bed or plumbing, just a thin mat on the hard floor. During the day, Mandela was forced to perform hard labor in a limestone quarry. The bright reflection from the quarry permanently damaged his eyesight. Despite these severe conditions, Mandela strived to maintain his dignity and humanity. He used his time in prison to broaden his knowledge and strengthen his resolve. He read extensively and continued his law studies. He shared his knowledge with other prisoners, turning the prison courtyard into an informal university. Mandela's leadership qualities shone even behind bars. He negotiated better conditions for the prisoners, including access to newspapers and more food. His fellow prisoners looked up to him, earning him the respect and admiration of many, including some prison guards. In 1982, after 18 years on Robben Island, Mandela was transferred to Pollsmoor Prison in Cape Town. Conditions here were somewhat better, but Mandela was isolated from the political developments happening outside the prison. It was also in Pollsmoor where Mandela contracted tuberculosis due to the damp conditions in his cell. Despite the harsh conditions of his imprisonment, Mandela never lost hope. He continued to communicate with the outside world, albeit secretly. Letters to his family and ANC members kept him informed about the growing resistance against apartheid and gave him the strength to endure. Mandela's 27 years in prison were marked by hardship and loneliness, but also by resilience and determination. He used this time to prepare for the future, to learn, to teach, and to lead. This period, as harsh as it was, shaped Mandela into the icon of resistance and the symbol of hope he would later become. The 1980s saw increasing international pressure on the South African government to end apartheid and release Nelson Mandela. In the country, widespread protests and escalating violence were making the situation untenable. In 1989, F.W. de Klerk became the President of South Africa. Realizing the urgent need for reform, he initiated a series of negotiations to end apartheid. One of his first steps was to release political prisoners, including Mandela. On February 11, 1990, after 27 long years, Nelson Mandela walked free. His release was broadcasted live across the world. As he stepped out of the prison gates, hand in hand with his wife Winnie Mandela, he raised his fist in a gesture of defiance and freedom, a powerful symbol that resonated around the globe. But Mandela knew that his release was just the beginning. Upon gaining his freedom, Mandela immediately embarked on a mission to ensure the freedom of all South Africans. He engaged in intense negotiations with President de Klerk to end apartheid and establish a multiracial government. These negotiations were not easy. There were many challenges, such as violence between different political factions and disagreements over the form that the new government should take. Despite these obstacles, Mandela remained committed to the goal of a democratic and equal South Africa. Mandela's leadership during these negotiations was critical. He was firm on his principles but also pragmatic, understanding that compromises were necessary for the greater good. His stature and personality helped him win the trust and respect of both his supporters and his opponents. These negotiations eventually led to the end of apartheid and paved the way for the first truly democratic elections in South Africa, a monumental achievement that would have been impossible without Mandela's tireless efforts and unwavering commitment to justice and equality. In the early months of 1994, South Africa was buzzing with anticipation. For the first time in the country's history, all citizens, regardless of their race, were going to vote in the national elections. The African National Congress, ANC, nominated Nelson Mandela as their presidential candidate. The election held in April 1994 was a significant event. Millions of South Africans, many of whom had never voted before, queued in long lines to cast their votes. The process was peaceful overall, a testament to the country's desire for change and unity. The ANC won a sweeping victory, securing 62% of the national vote. On May 10, 1994, Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as the first black president of South Africa. His inauguration was attended by leaders from around the world, reflecting the global recognition of this monumental moment. As president, Mandela faced a daunting task. South Africa was deeply divided along racial lines due to decades of apartheid. The economy was struggling, poverty was widespread, and the black majority was severely disadvantaged in terms of education and employment. Mandela approached these challenges with a spirit of reconciliation and unity. He emphasized the importance of healing the country's wounds and building a rainbow nation where all citizens had equal rights and opportunities. One of Mandela's first initiatives as president was the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which investigated human rights abuses during apartheid. This was a crucial step in helping the nation come to terms with its past. Mandela also launched major reforms to improve the living conditions of the black majority. His government focused on providing housing, education, and healthcare. He also worked to attract international investment to boost the economy. Despite the daunting challenges, Mandela's presidency was marked by hope and optimism. His personal story of endurance and forgiveness inspired South Africans and people around the world. His commitment to equality, justice, and human rights laid the foundation for a new chapter in South Africa's history. As he once said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." As president, Nelson Mandela had a colossal task ahead of him. He had to unite a deeply divided nation and dismantle the system of apartheid. Despite the monumental nature of this task, Mandela approached it with grace, wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to justice and equality. One of his first actions as president was to form a government of national unity. This was a coalition government that included his African National Congress (ANC) party, but also the National Party and the Inkatha Freedom Party, who had been political rivals. This decision was a strategic move to promote reconciliation and to ensure the peaceful transition of power. One of Mandela's significant achievements was the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, in 1995. The TRC, led by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, was set up to investigate human rights abuses during the apartheid era. It was not a court intended to punish people, but a platform for victims to share their stories and for perpetrators to confess their crimes in exchange for amnesty. This process was a crucial part of healing the nation's wounds and moving forward. In terms of policy, Mandela's government focused on combating the socio-economic inequality that was a direct result of apartheid. He implemented policies to provide better housing, education, and healthcare for the black majority, who had been disadvantaged for decades. Additionally, Mandela worked on strengthening South Africa's economy. His government introduced policies to encourage foreign investment and create job opportunities. Under his leadership, South Africa's economy gradually began to improve. Throughout his presidency, Mandela emphasized unity and reconciliation. He advocated for a rainbow nation where all South Africans, regardless of their color or background, were treated equally. His actions, such as inviting his former prison guard to his inauguration or having tea with the widow of Hendrik Verwoerd, the architect of apartheid, were testament to his commitment to reconciliation. Mandela's presidency set South Africa on a new path. He transformed a country that had been internationally known for its oppressive apartheid regime into a beacon of hope, symbolizing reconciliation and unity. His leadership brought real change, making him not just a national hero, but an international icon of peace and justice. After serving a 5-year term as president, Nelson Mandela made the decision not to run for a second term. In 1999, at the age of 80, he stepped down from his role as the leader of South Africa. This was a rare and admired move in a continent where many leaders cling to power. Mandela's retirement from politics did not mean the end of his public life. He became a prominent global advocate for a variety of social issues. He focused his efforts on combating HIV/AIDS, a cause very close to his heart, particularly after his son Makatho died from the disease in 2005. Mandela used his influence to raise awareness and fight the stigma associated with HIV/AIDS. He also established the Nelson Mandela Foundation, which focuses on rural development, school construction, and combating HIV/AIDS. Despite his retirement, Mandela remained a beloved figure in South Africa and around the world. He continued to symbolize the struggle against injustice and the pursuit of equality. His birthday, on July 18, was declared Mandela Day by the United Nations, a day to promote global peace and celebrate the spirit of Mandela. Mandela's legacy extends beyond his deeds and achievements. It's found in the values he championed: reconciliation, unity, and the innate dignity of all human beings. Even after his death in 2013, his life continues to inspire millions around the world to fight against injustice and strive for a better world. Mandela once said, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead." By this measure, Nelson Mandela's life was truly significant. His courage, perseverance, and commitment to justice have made a profound difference, not only in South Africa but also in the world. His legacy continues to live on, reminding us all of the power of resilience and the strength of the human spirit. Nelson Mandela's impact and influence extend far beyond the borders of South Africa. His life and work have had profound implications for global politics and social justice movements around the world. Mandela emerged as a symbol of resistance against racial segregation and political oppression at a time when many nations were struggling with similar issues. His nonviolent protests during the Defiance campaign, his decision to take up arms when necessary, and his determination to dismantle apartheid resonate with freedom fighters worldwide. Mandela's imprisonment for 27 years drew international attention to the brutality of the apartheid regime. His release marked the victory of justice and served as a powerful reminder that no unjust system lasts forever. This lesson continues to inspire many who resist oppressive regimes around the world. As the President of South Africa, Mandela demonstrated that leaders could govern with compassion and integrity. His focus on reconciliation, his refusal to seek revenge against those who had supported apartheid, and his decision to step down after one term set a standard for democratic leadership. His actions have influenced numerous leaders and political movements globally. Moreover, Mandela's fight against HIV/AIDS stigma and his championing of equality and human rights have had global repercussions. His work has encouraged greater international focus on these critical issues, impacting policies and attitudes around the world. Mandela's ability to forgive and his unwavering belief in the power of reconciliation have made him a universal symbol of peace. His approach has influenced various peacekeeping and reconciliation efforts around the globe, encouraging dialogue and understanding over conflict and revenge. In the broader historical context, Mandela stands among a select group of leaders, like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., who have profoundly shaped the course of history. Their lives serve as enduring reminders of the power of individuals to effect significant change, offering inspiration to future generations in the pursuit of justice and equality. To truly understand the impact of Nelson Mandela, one must look beyond his public persona and delve into personal reflections from those who knew him closely. Their memories paint a picture of a man whose influence extended beyond his political achievements and encapsulated an unyielding spirit, a compelling personality, and a deep-seated commitment to humanity. His fellow prisoners on Robben Island often recall Mandela's strength and resilience. Despite the harsh conditions and lengthy sentence, Mandela always carried an air of quiet dignity and never showed signs of despair. His optimism and fortitude provided hope for many of his fellow inmates during those difficult times. His jailers, too, provide a unique perspective on Mandela. Initially viewing him as a dangerous criminal, many gradually came to respect and even admire him. His lack of bitterness, his willingness to listen, and his persistent fight for equality left a lasting impression on them. Political figures across the spectrum have lauded Mandela's leadership style. His commitment to dialogue, his willingness to compromise, and his focus on reconciliation rather than revenge set him apart from many other leaders. He was known to make time for anyone, whether they were a world leader or a kitchen staff member. The broader South African public has their own memories of Mandela, or Madiba, as he is affectionately known. To them, he was more than just a president. He was the father of their nation, the man who brought them freedom and restored their dignity. Even years after his death, people speak of him with love and respect, expressing gratitude for his sacrifices and his enduring belief in the potential of his people. Lastly, Mandela's family gives us a glimpse into the man behind the public figure. His children and grandchildren remember him as a loving and dedicated family man. Despite his many responsibilities, he made an effort to spend time with his family, and his home was filled with warmth and laughter. All these reflections underscore the remarkable life of Nelson Mandela. He was not just a freedom fighter, a political leader, or a Nobel laureate. He was a beacon of hope, an inspiration to millions, and above all, he was a man deeply committed to justice, equality, and the betterment of humanity. His legacy continues to inspire and guide future generations, reminding us all that it is possible to change the world through determination, courage, and love.